Hi everybody, it's Steve Helping Napier. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today we're going to continue our discussion on the major topic of comprehensive adjective mapping. As I've said before, our goal is to update the map and complete the map. That's quite a project, but I think you guys are going to really learn a tremendous amount about the change grid, the subtleties, the nuances, et cetera, as we've chatted about before. So today what I wanted to do was to do that section of the program called Comparative Human Typological Analysis. And in that section of it, basically all we're doing is looking, as we often do in the Circle of Brilliance, at different models and basically saying, how do these models interact, overlay, whatever? Do they, don't they? What do they bring to the table? What do we bring to them, et cetera, the regular questions. So I thought, you know what, I got 10 minutes to kill. I'm going to go on to ChatGPT. And so this is what my query was. Let me zoom in on this. You guys can see where I was. So I said, please give me a list of 25 quadrant-based, four-type personality preference assessment in the last 200 years. For each, provide the name, the date, the developer, and the four archetypes their model utilizes with definitions for each. So that was my prompt, and it's given me 25 of them, but I want you to see what it is it actually gave me. The Myers-Briggs type indicator. You could say there are these four combinations, and we could see how those overlay on the change grid, but ultimately Myers-Briggs is considered to be a 16 type model. So when it comes to comparative human typological analysis, we only want to compare strict four-type models to other four-type models. Yes, it's true that when we get to a 16 type layer, then we do a deep dive into Myers-Briggs. And it's also true that a lot of 16 type models were part of the evolutionary growth understanding of a four type model. So like when we're talking about our four types, driver, amiable, analytical, and expressive, we do take it to a 16 type when we start looking at the secondary energies. So some 16 type models can go back into a four type sort of arrangement, and some of them don't. They just don't. So we need to play with that. So any thoughts about Myers-Briggs and the fact that ChatGPT missed the mark on its very first response?
But you have the Myers-Briggs on the change grid, yes? I thought I
Oh yeah, you
remember
can
looking at
overlay. You
that.
can overlay it, but it doesn't stretch to all the edges. One of the limitations for Myers-Briggs or challenges for Myers-Briggs is that it doesn't talk a lot about the dark side of any type. So it doesn't have danger zones. It just talks about that there is this driven driver, what we would call a driven driver. There is this type, and this particular type is all these good things that we talk about. For like an amiable driven driver, that's good stuff. But they don't really talk about where warmongering and fighting and all that aggressive stuff comes into play. And so for multiple reasons, we don't talk about Myers-Briggs as being a four type model. And by the way, we could say, there are two type models. Can you guys name a two type model of human behavior or human personality typing or temperament profiling, anything? There's two of them that should come to mind quickly.
In fact, I didn't know such exist. I thought they were all four type
Oh, nope.
yeah,
There's a two type.
interesting.
The two types are you right-handed or left-handed? And are you male or female? And so there's lots that just say you're a male. This
Oh,
is what's true. You're a female. So it just really is speaking to the human, I don't know, pattern, whatever motivation to try to divide people into groups. So I don't know why that's part of our way of operating. I'm sure it's had some sort of efficiency to the way that we analyze and assemble things. So there's got to be a cognitive value in doing it, but it seems like it goes all the way back to men versus women. And while it may not be politically correct at this time period to talk about these differences, you don't have to watch too many old movies to very quickly see that there were very, very distinct profiles of the male mind, the female mind, et cetera, not all that long ago, right? So we
Yeah.
could divide people up by gender, but we never saw enough value in that to say, are men more likely to be outgrid or upgrid? And we
Mm,
thought, we should just leave that to the people who develop these strict 4-type models and wonder, did they ever say that of all of the driver types that are out there, personality types that are out there, what percentage of them are men and what percentage are women? I don't know they ever did such a
mm.
thing. And certainly, I don't think they ever tried to figure out if you were right-handed or left-handed.
Yeah, that's always interesting to me. I think from a human perspective, we probably do that a lot. That kind of it's called categorical
Yep.
analyses because that helps us to make sense out of it. But
Mhm.
there's so many. I think it's quite fragile.
I
You,
would
you know what I mean? And the total essence, like the whole essence, like that's a lot of the stuff that's
Yeah,
the variables that we get from the change grid is missing from that kind of analysis.
absolutely. And so that's why we can say, look, there's a reason why a model that's got just a handful of different types is going to be more general and therefore differently useful than a model that gives you infinite variety, which is what we're that's our leanings. We go, no, there's no real buckets you can put humanity into that are going to hold accurate for every person. You just can't. But you can divide them into different categories, and based on those categories, you can probably describe them well enough. So we may not find them useful today, but there was a time period where those things were considered to be a normal day of living. So
Interesting.
yeah, and so this whole idea, keep in mind, like for example, what is the Latin word for left?
Sinestra.
Sinestra.
Sinatra.
And
Yeah.
it is where we get the word sinister from. So it was thought that people that were left-handed had some sort of proclivity towards violent or criminal behavior.
Interesting.
Yeah, all because of left-handedness. And so no one wanted their kid to be left-handed. And now we also understand that there's, the people that are left-handed have a higher incidence of accidental death than right-handed people because the world's pretty much engineered for right-handed people. So of course they're going to find themselves in situations that um, they have to do something that's very alien to them as far as their handedness goes. There's also 3-type models. So it wasn't all that long ago that there was the science of somatyping. So somatyping
Mhm.
was, are you an ectomorph, an endomorph, or a
Mm.
mesomorph?
Right.
Now that quickly became a 9-type model because they said that every body, a physical body, has a certain mesomorphic contributor, endomorphic, and ectomorphic
Hmm.
contributions. And so there, but if they stop just looking at saying like it's a 3 by 3 and state, no, the variance, the percentages that we hold of each of these things can move it to an infinite variety of possible landing spots.
Hmm.
We do that. But anyway, I'm babbling, but you get the idea. No, there's lots of models that have got fewer than 4, but for whatever reason, 4 was the big one. And that's what you're going to find the greatest number of models in the 4-type kind of area. And you're going to find tremendous overlap between them. But anyway, Myers-Briggs is not one of them. The DISC assessment, 1928, dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. So what I wanted to do on today's call is see how quickly can you overlay their archetypes. Now notice that ChatGPT did not fulfill my prompt. I
Hmm.
told it to give me definitions for
Of
each.
each. Hmm.
It hasn't done that. So the rest, fine. The developer, their archetypes, thanks. But I would want to know, how are they defining some of these? Only because what these words might mean to us today And what these words meant to someone in 1928 could be different. I don't
Hmm.
necessarily believe that for this one, but that's what I want to know. What is the definition that the developer actually used for whatever types they're talking about? Okay, anyway, where does dominance go? Outgrid, upgrid, downgrade, ingrid.
Out.
Outgrid. Where does influence go?
Chris?
Hmm.
Oh, that's the expressive. Influence is more of an upgrade kind of thing, a motivating, inspiring sort of thing. Steadiness,
Down.
down, and conscientiousness.
And
Okay, we put steadiness in grid and conscientiousness down grid. Wait, no, is that right? DI.
Why would conscientious be
Because it's all
in grid?
conscientiousness is all about doing the right thing the right way. They tend to be perfectionists, stick with
So,
patterns, routines, etc. That
so
does
that would
feel
not be
very
the
analytical.
center per se, or that's more
No, no,
like
no,
a
these definitely overlay. I think the
got
C
it.
is down grid.
Okay,
And the S is more in grid because the
got
study
it.
ended up describing interactions with people more, and
Okay,
conscientious is more about situations. So I think that's what it is. So we go counterclockwise. Out grid is D, up grid is I, in grid is S, and down grid is C.
got it.
Also, some models refer to the C type as the compliant.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, down grid people are more compliant. Well, we talk about that. They're the ones who
so,
believe they're the ones who believe that the world would work more easily if everyone was compliant, but they tend to make exceptions for themselves very often. Speaking as one of those types, I have to tell you that's it is.
see, when we were talking in the prior call about the five behaviors, uh, they are married to or integrated with the DISC assessment.
Yes, yes. And that's great. It's been around for a very long time. I mean, it's coming up on its 100th anniversary. So, good for them. And I think, but it overlays. And so if we go now to the Keirsey temperament sorter, that's 50 years later. And the archetypes where you are an artisan, a guardian, an idealist, or a rational.
Mm,
And so it's kind of fun to see where do those overlay. Then we go to the Enneagrams. The Enneagrams are not a 4 type. So again, it's like, chat, can you just do what I ask you to do? But yeah, there's a lot more there. I think there's 5 or 8 total. What is the Enneagrams? What do they say? Yeah,
no,
one,
they
two,
have
three,
like
4, 5, 6,
nine.
7, 8, 9. Yeah, there's 9 types,
Yeah,
right? It's Enneagrams, 9
yeah.
types. Yeah. Herman brain dominance. Okay. Analytical, sequential, interpersonal, and imaginative. Um,
Mm,
I could probably overlay those very easily just with what we have. I would put analytical downgrid,
mm-hmm,
put imaginative upgrid, interpersonal ingrid, and sequential outgrid. All right.
mm-hmm.
We'll see. Again, we can play with these. Social styles in the 1960s. Are you, oh, there we are. An analytical, an amiable, a driver, or an expressive.
Interesting.
And then true colors. Are you red, gold, green, or orange?
Never
Well,
even
orange
heard
is
of
up
that.
grid. Relational is probably in grid. Gold, organized, probably is
Down.
consider. Well, no, I think they're going to consider it out grid because
Really?
analytical is down.
Yeah, down. Okay.
So, if you see why I wanted the definitions, so instead of us
Mm-hmm.
assuming what they mean by these labels, I'd like to see those. Then you get to insights, 1990s. And again, can you guys imagine that someone put this program together and they've marketed and presented it very, very effectively? Make no mistakes about it. Insights discovery is very, very popular around the world, but it just makes you wonder, is this really different than this one or this one,
Mm-hmm.
or this one or this one? You know?
See, quick question.
Yeah.
The social styles, uh, is that the one that you've integrated into the change grid?
Yeah, that's the one that I felt used the labels that were most readily understood by people in my audiences. I didn't have to try to explain to them what a rational was. They knew what an analytical is. They know what amiable is. They know what driver. So I just found the social styles archetypes to be more relatable, more easily. So that's why we use those.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted
Okay.
to be able to talk about energy because we really aren't into personality typing. Do we need to be? I mean, look how many models there are. So, but I wanted to just go, no, I'm more interested in the energy. Which of these descriptors describe energy more effectively? Like I can't talk about a cool blue energy or a completer finisher energy. It gets no, I just couldn't. But when I said like, oh no, there's a driver energy, there's an amiable energy, no, that just kind of rolls off. So I think that's how we ended up just kind of choosing their language, their labels.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Insights. Okay, but insights has fiery red, sunshine yellow, earth green, and cool blue. All right. Um, the Belbin team roles. There's now look at this one. Thank you again, Chat GPT, for not doing that. Plant, resource investigator, coordinator, shaper, monitor, evaluator, team worker, implementer, completer, finisher, and specialist.
Wow.
6, 7, 8. That's 9 types. So I don't even know that that exists as an instrument that they used for any kind of profiling. The FIRO-B, fundamental interpersonal relations orientation, are your archetypes are inclusion, control, and affection. Okay, I'll tell you where these go. I can certainly do that. So affection would be in grid, inclusion would be mid grid, control would be out grid.
Wow.
I don't know. I'd have to see their definitions because when we talk about someone being in control, we may very well mean the PowerPoint. So that's when they're best control for themselves. So again, 1958, I was 1 year old. I think that it'd be interesting to know what their definitions kind of were. And by the way, to ChatGPT, that's 3. I asked for 4. The personality and preference inventory, the POPI, based on various work-related behaviors. So that tells me there's a bunch. The big 5 personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Now, big 5 is extremely well integrated in the world of organizations, et cetera. That's been around, very successful. But again, sometimes you wonder, are these things successful because they're just so, oh, or are they just really well marketed? So, because I don't know, what does that one cover that some of these others might not have already covered? Process communication model, thinker, persister, imaginer, rebel, promoter, harbinizer. So that's 6 types. Caliper has a bunch of them. Strength deployment inventory. I remember the SDI. Altruistic nurturing, assertive directing, analytical autonomizing, and flexible cohering. Yeah, how many of you want some definitions? The Killman conflict mode: competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, or accommodating. I'll bet, Tim, are you familiar with this one? Is this one that you use in any of your facilitations?
No. Which one?
Yeah, Thomas Killman. Maybe we can look it up and see if there's something there. And I wonder, Shags, is this one for you? Creator, star supporter, deal maker. No, I know your language for the money.
No, not really.
You're different, right?
Yeah, I was introduced to that wealth dynamics back in 2017. Roger Hamilton is a well-known entrepreneur, uses his resort in Bali is for entrepreneurs, and he now has one in South Africa. But he used a lot of the Asian kind of background, like the elements of, air, water, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And he kind of put them in like this 4-box thing, and then like I'm creator according to that profile.
All right.
And it had creator as a star profile, in that as long as you spend time doing that activity according to that test.
Right, because a creator could live solely in their mind.
Right, so you're creating flow.
Behaviorally. Yeah.
And that's his whole things about this flow, and that's why he uses natural elements and I forget the Chinese model that he put together, almost like a merging of brilliance to come out with this wealth dynamics. He has talent dynamics. He has a huge community of members around the world in that platform called Genius U.
Interesting. Interesting. And now that you've mentioned that, let me remind everybody that another thing that distinguishes these models from one another is what the front end looks like. So what is their actual assessment? Is it, choose from these four things, rank these things? I don't know what the assessment itself looks like. And then of course they may very well be different in their output. Are they making simple descriptive observations about these different types, or are they trying to help you develop certain traits, whatever? So the front end and the back end may very well be different from one to the next, but that's why I've always said I'm only interested in their map. How they got to their map and what they do with their map really doesn't hold my interest for very long at all. All I really care about is the map. And specifically, all I care about are the detailed descriptions from the source of each of their archetypes so that I can extract adjectives and see if those adjectives resonate with that same adjective being placed prior, in earlier model integrations. You guys with me? Does that sound like tedious and boring, or does that sound interesting to you guys? Is
No, I
that how
think
you'd
you're
like to
right, because a
spend a
lot of
day?
these, from what I'm seeing, is really the marketing behind them. Because when you mention like this idea of context, they're missing that. A lot of these for me, I've taken, Strengths Finder, I've taken a lot of these, and they're missing something, but they have clever marketing
Yeah, of course they do.
behind them. And so
Yeah.
you put things in terms that meet people where they are and they can understand. Those seem to be the ones that are done really well. For instance, the Big Five is used in entrepreneurial DNA tests that a lot of these accelerators use. So that's how they match me as a mentor with a mentee. They have them take these tests.
Yep. Well, let me describe for you a test, so you know why the whole front end of things, I guess, concerns me, because we did say that a lot of their success is based on their marketing. One of the biggest things that they point out in their marketing is how validated the tool happens to be. And how many times it's been used and what the consistency is, blah blah blah. Well, there is a model that is used widely in what do you call if you put New England and Australia together? There's a name for that little part of the world. Regardless, very
New
popular model.
Zealand?
No, well, New Zealand plus Australia. There's a name
Oh,
for those two entities. I don't. It doesn't really matter. But this model very popular in both of those countries. It gives you two lists of 50 words. On the first list, it's all positive qualities, attributes, etc. And the second list is all negative qualities, attributes, etc. It asks you to take those 50 words from each of the list and extract from them 25, and then list those 25 from the one that you feel most describes you to the one that least describes you. And on the negative side, the 25 that are most descriptive of your negative tendencies, and then rank those from least problematic to most problematic. Okay, that's your front end. The report says you think of yourself as being this and this and this and somewhat less this and this and blah, blah, blah. And they use the exact same adjectives. There are no additional conclusions drawn or anything done. It simply feeds back to you what you told it to think about you. And then they ask people at the end of it, how accurate was this interpretation? And people will rate the interpretation massively high. And so this thing is marketed as having a 99.9% accuracy rate. So,
Mm,
I mean, does that bother anybody else? Does that just kind of go like, it's
mhm,
just it's a gimmick, it's a shell game. They're moving,
mhm,
things from one place to another, like you should be surprised. So, okay,
mhm.
wait.
And research methods is all about validity and reliability, right?
Yeah, Tim, you were kind of garbled there. Say that again.
Research methods is all about validity and reliability.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. 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 And so, no doubt, it was viewed as being reliable. But they can use that for marketing. And it's like, no, you got to be making a claim about what this instrument is going to actually do and why it does it better than other things. And that's what the research need to show. So, if you're using a pre-employment assessment of some sort, you should be able to say that employments that came as a result of using this tool have been X% effective compared to blah. You could probably do research and that would have some meaning, but a lot of it is just nonsense.
I think that a lot of this shows just how it definitely shows the demand. Like there's
Huh?
a demand that people want to understand something. The challenge becomes, again, this is where I think the change grid is more a viable tool. Challenge becomes people become the label, they become that
Yep,
identity,
that's
and then
right.
they don't even know what's beyond that. So, like in the HR space, assessment science is from a $4 billion subsector.
That's right.
And so they each have their own assessments they like, but the challenge becomes they don't know how to implement that. No one's really modeling what high performance looks like in the organization, but yet they want high performing people.
That's right. And they're buying it based on marketing literature instead of hiring someone who has advanced education in psychometrics, who can
Hmm.
help a company find and apply the assessment that is best suited for what their question is.
Right.
But yeah, it's like you need the difference. It's a real estate agent, but you need a real estate agent for psychometric tools. I mean, you can see how many there are, and this is just scratching the surface. Predictive index has been used a lot. Um,
Hmm.
Dominance, extroversion, patience, formality. I'll assume dominance is out grid, extroversion is up grid, patience is in grid, and formality is down grid. You get to the Gallup Strengths Finder,
Hmm.
34 themes divided into 4 domains:
Hmm.
executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. That's out grid, up grid, in grid, down grid, but I think it all overlays on the out grid quadrant.
Hmm.
Yeah. Spiral dynamics is not a personality typing system. I don't even know why it's on this list. Their archetypes are these colors. We already know that spiral dynamic is talking about the evolution of human values.
Hmm.
And so it's the values may very well have changed and they might be saying that, but to say that there are people that are at this particular level, and if these are the values they're likely to hold, that would be fine. But I have to believe that at this point in time, there are few, if any, people living down in beige or whatever the lowest color is. Actually, I thought the lowest color was red. Maybe it's blue. No, I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Um, okay, the 1990s, Facet 5, never heard of it. Never,
Me either.
but will, energy, affection, control, and emotionality. Hmm. Apparently, affection isn't about emotionality. Again, I need to see their definitions. The Hexaco personality inventory.
That's
Uh,
quite popular.
is it?
Hmm. A lot of, or if you look at these executive search firms, a lot of them use Hexacle.
Wow. Well, here you go. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different types. So it'd be interesting to look at it. I've got no reason to believe it wouldn't overlay, but I've never seen its map, and I don't know what it's describing for these. And the team management profile, it just says archetypes, and then it stopped. So I said,
Mm,
you know what? Give me 25 more, perhaps more from common culture, like the type of car you may be, or which house the sorting hat would place you in. And give me some more ancient models as well, like Galen. And so what I was trying to do here is get it to recognize that the internet is filled with parlor game types of personality tests. So what kind of car are you? Which animal are you? In fact, there's a whole personality system called the animal in you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what I turned out to be now that I'm thinking about it. But it's like 25 different animals, and it'll tell you whatever's going on. Interesting, but there you go. So that's what I was looking for. Give me some of these more pop culture kinds of things. So the Four Temperaments by Galen: sanguine, choleric, melancholic, phlegmatic. We've all heard of these before, but it'd be interesting if
Yeah.
you could tell me what these four things mean and where they overlay, because this language is not in use.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and we know these are just four disgusting body oozes. So, where are we talking about? Where they go? But that's, probably one of the earliest recorded attempts made to describe people's behavior, whatever, in terms. Hogwarts houses. Speaking as a Hufflepuff. No, I'm not. I'm a Ravenclaw. Um, so Gryffindor, brave and courageous. That's outgrid. Hufflepuff, loyal and patient. Um, Interestingly enough, more in-grid and up-grid. Ravenclaw more down-grid, but Slytherin is what's out-grid. So it's like, wait, does this need to rotate 45 degrees counterclockwise to make sense? So the Gryffindor would be somewhat out and somewhat up, and
Hmm.
Hufflepuff would be some part um, up and some part in.
And
Ravenclaw, some part in and some part. No, this wouldn't be work. That wouldn't work. I'd have to rotate another thing. I think of Slytherin as being the outgrid danger zone.
mm-hmm.
So we'd have to kind of fun to see where do these all fit in. Um, Avatar, the Last Airbender. Are you a water bender, an earth bender, a fire bender, or an air bender? Um, Although that's has probably not been as popular as any of these personality typing you see listed up here. These kinds of things, personality typing in Hogwarts or at Avatar, whatever, these things could be multi-billion-dollar movie franchises. So
Mm-hmm.
to think that this is just kind of a silly use of it, well, no, I think they made a lot of money. So good for them. Zodiac signs, there's 12. Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, this one we did look at. We were talking about plotting morals and ethics, pride and shame on the change grid. So lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good, lawful neutral, true neutral, chaotic neutral, and same things for evil. That would be an interesting thing to look at. I did play Dungeons and Dragons at some point, but I don't remember much about any of these to figure out where they would overlay. When it comes to ancient Chinese Wuqing elements, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water.
Yeah, that's what the wealth dynamics, that's one of the models that's included in it there that
Yep,
is built on.
yep. And you have to figure out then which one of these would go mid-grid, or is it 5 types going around? How do these overlay? The Ayurvedic dosas, um, fire, yeah, good fire, air, movement, structure, earth, but it only has 3, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the 4 symbols of Chinese constellations: the azure dragon, the vermilion bird, the white tiger, the black tortoise. I mean, I got to tell you, I'm finding these more interesting than I found all these at the first batch of 25. And again, why are we looking at these, or why would we want to look at these things when it comes to adjective mapping? It may very well be that from this Ayurvedic perspective, certain things were looked at or noticed and are being shared in their descriptions. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why an azure dragon is what we would find to the east. I have no idea why, and why is it east? Why is it a dragon, and why is it blue? So I don't know, but I'm sure if we got into readings about these, we could go. There's some insights there. The Game of
No,
Thrones, great houses. Were any of you fans of Game of Thrones?
I never seen it.
I mean, when I started watching one episode and thought, like, this seems to be the kind of show that don't fall in love with anybody because they're likely to be killed. You know, there are just too many people dying in the first episode. Anyway, but are you Stark, Lannister, Baratheon, Targaryen, Targaryen, uh, or I don't know, but wouldn't it be interesting to look at it? The Marvels of genders personalities. Captain Marvel or Captain America is outgrid. Iron Man is innovative and charismatic. Upgrade. The Hulk is introspective and powerful. Downgrade. Brave ancient wisdom. Thor, you'd think would be in the outgrid as well.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
again, we'd have to kind of go, we need a larger Marvel universe if you want to work all the way around the change grid, but there it is. 4 car types. Are you a sports car, a luxury car? Where are you? Fire, water, air, and earth. There's also a 5 type model similarly. And this would be with, uh, let's see, in the middle, they put spirit. So that would be ether, air, fire, water, and earth. Never did anything with Ninja Turtles, so I don't know who these people are. Beatles personality types, didn't even know such a novel thing existed. But it would make sense that if they were a successful team, doesn't it make sense that there would be all 4 types there in order to bring balance to the
Mhm.
group? So, okay, there's probably some merit there. Sex and the City characters, I never saw the show, so I don't know what these are referencing. Friends, I did watch Friends, but this is 6 types. Yeah, 6 types. The Greek gods, Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, and Athena. Winnie the Pooh. Which one would I be? Oh, I see. They would say that I'm Eeyore. Easygoing and friendly, anxious and timid, energetic and fun-loving. No, you know what? These would all overlay on the amiable quadrant.
Mm.
Yeah. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: conquest, war, famine, and death. Really? Um, I don't know if those are personality types or where those would live. I would suggest that conquest would be the expressive driver. The war is definitely danger zone. Famine is definitely danger zone. Death is danger zone. So yeah, we'd have to do a look into such thing. 4 seasons. This one I have seen before: spring, summer, autumn, and winter.
Mhm.
Tarot cards. Those are not what I know. Oh, the king courts. Yeah, I know tarot cards by different suits. So where's cups and wands and all that. Classical music composers, Shakespearean characters, Alice in Wonderland characters, and ancient Egyptian gods. Okay. And then,
Interesting.
yeah, isn't it interesting? Because now we're up to 50 models, and I'm not going to take a deep dive into any of them because, quite honestly, I think we've got enough adjectives on the map already that it would be surprising to stumble across one of these old models that's going to give us much. I would much rather use the approach from inspiration of known adjectives to give us more nuance adjectives to look at
Mhm.
that way rather than do the deep dive. But I think it's important for you guys to understand the process of adjective mapping is not um, it's not a simple kind of a thing. Um, Even if we do have a methodology for using it, there is still vast quantities of information that we would pour through in order to create that adjective map. Would
Mhm.
that be valuable? I think the answer is yes.
Mhm.
Um, but if my goal is to simply create a single map with 1,440 adjectives spread across it, I don't need to keep digging beyond that. I just need to find 1,440 that do the job. If you're with me on that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So don't think we're going to go through all these 50. We're not. But then I thought, okay, since I'm talking to chat, I said, give me more from the ancient, ephemera, philosophical kind of angles, Plato's soul types. I didn't even know Plato had soul types. So rational, spirited, and appetitive. Hmm. All right, that's to have an appetite, desirous, materialistic. Aristotle's ethical virtues, courage.
Yes, I've heard of that one.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Is that 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. All right.
Mhm.
Righteous indignation. The Vedic personality types from ancient India. Again, I don't know if these were used for personality typing, but they are saying they are.
In fact, I think Ben Franklin derived his 13 virtues from Aristotle's
Oh, I
ethical
think, wait, yeah, let's
virtues.
just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, this is 12. We'd have to figure out what the 13th is.
Mhm.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. No, that's 12. Yeah. See, I often think there is an additional one that's the one in the middle. So what's the center? That'll always take an even typed model and turn it into an odd type or an odd numbered model. Okay, we already talked about the Chinese philosophy, 5 elements, but Buddhist personality types: greed, hate, delusion, faithful, intelligent, and speculative.
Mhm.
So that seems like there are 3 negative types and 3 more positive types. And I wonder if there are blendings of these. Okay, 4 cardinal virtues. Hindu gunas. Oh, we already talked about that, Thomas. Oh, no. The Celtic Druidic tree astrology. Are you birch, rowan, or ash? Didn't even know rowan was a kind of tree. Native American totem animals. Bear, wolf, eagle, deer. And there's more than that. Well, I guess I use eagle, but so Sufi personality types: scholar, disciple, saint, prophet, and king. We talked about 7 deadly sins and 7 heavenly virtues. And again, we didn't think that while it's very easy to plot each of these virtues or sins on the change grid if you put them into an adjective form, I don't see anywhere that this has ever been used for personality typing. Norse gods, Jungian archetypes, the self, the shadow, the animus, and the persona. Okay. The 4 humors: Gnostic eons and archons. They're not telling us what they are. Taoist philosophy, Egyptian gods and their traits, Roman virtues, Stoic virtues.
Mhm.
These, by the way, would probably be more halfway outgrid, halfway downgrid if we looked at the 4 personality types there. I guess what I'm saying is that one of these would be an amiable driver. Probably, yeah, one of these would be a analytical driver. One of these would be a driven analytical, and one of these would be an expressive analytical. That might be too much, but you guys get the idea. Things don't necessarily strictly overlay. You have to do some rotations once in a while. Renaissance humoral theory, linking them to environment and bodily conditions. You know, one I'm not seeing, and this would be fun. It talks about personality being dictated by the environment in which you were reared. And the 2 axes are temperature and humidity. So if you live in a very hot, very dry environment, that would be the desert, obviously. What does that kind of translate into behaviorally? If you were in a very cold and dry environment, that would be a frozen tundra kind of thing. I don't. If you are in a hot and wet environment, hot and wet is probably upgrid. I would imagine that's because that's a rainforest. Hot and wet, rainforest, tropical. And then what is wet and no, cold and wet? Ugh, sounds like the Midwest. The Pacific Northwest.
But see, when you map something like that on the change grid and we talk about like natural movement, like person like myself that live in so many different places, how would you account for that, or is that not
Well,
part of
you know,
the?
I think we're doing then is adding a dynamic element to a static kind of a model. And I'm not so sure when I was reading that particular model about temperature versus humidity, if it was describing temperaments versus personality,
Ah,
the
got
general
it.
mood that you have. And I certainly know that there are plenty of people that are cold and dry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know plenty of people that are, yeah, hot and dry. You know, think about personality typing or
Mm-hmm.
what? No, temperament, mood, that sort of thing.
Got it.
Nevertheless, it's interesting. And if it overlays, and lo and behold, it overlays. Does it give us some insight? So if I said, well, where do you think people that have a drive or energy, where does that energy tend to live? In a hot or a cold environment?
Hot.
Hot. And is it going to be dry or is it going to be wet?
See, that one I don't know. I don't get, I'm not having a hard time with that one.
Yeah. Have you spent much time in the desert and then flown to Miami? Because
Yeah.
it's instantly noticeable.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so I would wonder if it has to be rotated more like 45 degrees rather than our normal placement overlaying on upgrade. Maybe cold, no, maybe hot and wet is halfway up and halfway out. You
Mm,
know? Maybe cold and dry is that's the analytical is going to be more down and out because that would be a snowy environment.
mm.
And then on the other side, we've got amiable. Do you want to have um, cold and wet or hot and wet? I think hot and wet is upgrid, and I think cold and wet would be ingrid.
Now that makes sense.
Yeah. So there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's not on the list. So, but there's so many more beyond this. The Pythagorean numerology, I wonder if that would map more to the Enneagram. Alchemical processes as personality transformations.
Whoa.
Calcination is the destruction of the ego. Dissolution is uncovering of the true self. Fermentation, spiritual rebirth. These are interesting. It's like you want to go like, really? If I were to go back and study alchemy, this is something that gets talked about? I would find that very intriguing. Not particularly useful, but very intriguing. The Kabbalistic tree of life, don't know. We'd have to look that up. I Ching and Samkhya, philosophy's three gunas, sattva, raha, tamas. Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to show you this so that we could kind of have an appreciation for how these adjectives can begin to be shifted into place. And once I know you guys have the appreciation for that, I could say, now I'm comfortable making the quantum leap. Because if I've shown you this many quadrant-based methods, and you guys can see how they could be made to overlay. If I said the 5 types are just a 4 type with a balance in the middle, do I need to show you umpteen models to illustrate that? Or do you go like, oh, no, I get it, I can relate, or like a 16 type is really a 4 type that's looking at a secondary type. Uh,
Mhm.
9 types just divide the change grid into a tic-tac-toe board. And by the way, 8 type models would just draw a bunch of like pizza slices across the change grid, and then it becomes a 9 type by putting one in the middle. So all this stuff really does overlay. There are 25 type models. There's just, you name it. But sooner or later you get to the point where you see there are plenty of philosophers and researchers who have said like there's infinite variety. There's
Yeah.
might be an interesting parlor game. This might have some usefulness given certain circumstances, like if you are trying to sort through a lot of people for whatever reasons, but ultimately an individual is an individual. And
Yeah.
it's more important that you have the skill set to work at the individual level. I'm talking about that as a coach or as a counselor,
Mhm.
therapist, or whatever, human development professional. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Questions, comments?
It's interesting to see this, how many of these things there are. And I wonder,
This is scratching the
uh,
surface.
yeah, like how far away from, when you mentioned like on yesterday's call, the natural and learned abilities,
Yeah.
like I'm wondering like how far away some of these have moved from just the simple things that that can be applied to so many different things.
Yeah.
And now they try to invent something new, and we lose the efficacy, if you will, of the
Yeah.
things that, like the many of the Chinese ones that were mentioned here, the Ayurvedic and the Indian. That's all based on things that we're subject to every day: air,
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
water.
Yep. Yep.
You
Yep. Yep.
know,
And they're things that people created as opposed to describing how people are. Like, I've always wondered, where is the personality typing system that says there is only one? So
mm,
the thing you want to look at, or the one thing we should start by looking at, is what holds true across all of humanity. And that's why we were
right,
talking about before. Are there any true human values? Um,
right,
we did talk about country specific values, and there's plenty of distinctions to be made and all that, but what is it that is absolutely true about all humans, all personality? I think in order to answer that, we'd probably have to focus on instincts and
hmm,
say that's what makes us all identical, because it requires no thought whatsoever. It's how we literally are programmed at a biological level. And that
right.
doesn't mean that it lasts forever. I have to believe that we're born with certain instincts that we kind of set aside over time, but that instinct.
Right.
See, it's very much a part of the DEI conversation. And I
Mm,
think on one of the prior calls, I referenced Mervyn Logan and Julie Rossner's model.
yes.
And the center of that model talks about personalities. And what we began to explore is the differences in the personalities, how they intersect in organizations,
Yes.
and
Yes.
particularly from a teaming standpoint, what happens when these varying personality types find themselves in conflict or on the same team and trying
That's
to achieve.
right. That's right. That's right.
Mhm,
Yep.
mhm.
So yeah. So if you
But
guys have,
there's still to be missing some of the context, though, for me. Because like even the two types that you're talking about when we start talking about male, female, like I remember it used to be thought of, although it's not proven valid, that women can feel whereas men can't. And
oh,
then they looked at like the corpus callosum, the fold between left and right brain. Now,
mhm,
in women, many of that, the corpus callosum is designed there. In women, it seems to be more fiber rich.
yeah.
And so they're thinking that that's why it was said that women can feel and men don't. But we know men can feel. They may not express it or express it differently, but we
Yeah.
know they can feel.
Right. And we may not know why. We just know that it's true.
Right,
I don't know how
exactly.
it compares. I don't know what controls it, because I mean, obviously genders are different. And to think they're only different in certain geographical spots on their body is, nonsense. They're
Right,
different.
right.
Um, so yeah. And then you go, well, um, what about the people who, hang on just 1 second. Just got distracted. It'll come back to me. But I am just very much wondering why it is that we haven't looked at the one. What is it that really brings us
Mhm.
all together? What really is true about
I
all?
think that's what the religions try to do.
Do you think
But
so? You don't think they just tried to move money out of your pockets and into theirs?
Oh, that's the other part of it. But
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that they become these institutions of perceptions, but ideally, when you study them, as I have, many of them are trying to underscore this idea of what makes us human, and how does that human experience plays out. And so, but oftentimes these institutional perceptions put these concepts out there that separates us, and so it
Mhm.
becomes the division. So like in the Jesuit schools that I went to, Jesuits are supposed to be the highest echelons of Catholicism,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Because they were dissatisfied with the old model, so to say, or so to speak. And so they kind of created their own thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we keep evolving these things. And again, it moves away from the centering aspect that we would say within that green circle, and then move out from that in
Mhm.
terms of living life. But when we create these otherism kinds of conceptions, I think that becomes part of the problem. People
Mhm.
are so disconnected from self, but
Right.
they can, document and know everything about anything and anyone outside of self. And I think a lot of that has evolved from all this stuff out there that has you figured out, but you don't have time to kind of connect the dots and see that we're not that much different outside of,
Well,
you know,
isn't it interesting that maybe one of the unifying qualities of a human, the one thing we all share in common, is a desire to divide everybody else into a bunch of groups.
right.
I mean, even daily life, friend versus foe, you know.
Right,
It's like,
exactly.
so that tells me that if that's a primal kind of a thing, I was raised that fear is the instinct that keeps humans alive. And if
Mm,
we didn't have that fear, then we wouldn't last very long because we'd be doing stupid things. And I remember in my, I don't know, junior high school, maybe high school science class, they were talking about grip strength in newborn babies. So do you know that your grip strength is actually highest at birth, and
hmm
it gets less and less as you get older and older. They would demonstrate this by taking a newborn, I don't know how fresh, but newborn, and they would put a string, a rope, something over their crib. Obviously, no one's in any danger, but they would then lift the baby up slightly and put its hands on the cord, and the kid or the rope, the baby would clamp on to that rope. And their thought was that it may not know what down means yet, but it knows that down isn't good. So
hmm
it's hanging on. It's an instinct that's it's keeping it from going like, well, all I can do is all I can do. And right now, all I can do is grab hold of this rope, this string.
You know what, T, I was just looking some of the stuff up and it was language, abstract thought, and cooperation kept coming up. The other was
Mm,
awareness of self, and
Mhm.
the other that kept coming up was love, that the heart rhythm
Yeah.
um, actually had a lot to do with it too.
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
See,
and we're going to
those
go.
seems like things we're moving away from. We're
Yeah.
outsourcing these things. You know what I
Well,
mean?
because we've been allowed to interact with them, cognitively, but I think if we're saying like, no, these are all really programmed into us at the cellular level. These are our
Hmm
instincts or whatever. I do think things that we like grip strength, we may lose our access to them or our relationship with them may change over time. Um,
hmm
like I believe it's a very primal thing that we're driven towards survival and procreation.
hmm
I mean, we're a biological critter. That's what we do.
Absolutely.
Everything
Absolutely.
else in between is just what we do to continue those things.
Absolutely. Even like think about a baby crawling and wanting to walk. You don't have to
Yeah,
ask the baby, right? So
no.
movement in and of itself. But again, when we build infrastructure, technology so that we do less moving, what are we doing?
Yep, 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 yep. Well, we're moving backwards. It is.
Hey, hey T.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Good. I find interesting about assessment tools is how organizations use them so that people could work better together.
Yes.
But because of, like Brian said, the labeling aspect of it, you miss the mark 100% of the time. Because if you look at a person as if they're just a driver, and that's the totality of who this person is, you miss all the fundamental stuff. So a driver could be, if you look at an iceberg, that's above the waterline. So, okay, my attributes may put me as this, but you're missing everything that matters to me, which is below the waterline. So you don't ever get the connection of relationship you need to further that relationship building, trust, and having that integrity and character and all those things that matter to people.
That's right. That's right. And, I think the worst expression of that is that the moment you are chosen to be a member of a particular group, you're kind of automatically unchosen to be in all the rest of them. And so they put you in these boxes and treat you in accordance with those boxes. So not only do they never get to know the real you, you never get to become the real you. And
Exactly.
so we can't treat people through these labels. These labels are nothing more than a parlor game, because look, you learned this in a 90-minute breakout session at a business meeting. So what do you want?
Well, that's why with
Right.
money coaching, we tell people this isn't what you are or who you are, it's where you are
Where you are.
Mm.
Exactly.
in your relationship with money.
Right.
You're in your victim energy, you're in your warrior energy.
Right.
Innocent.
All this stuff can be
Mm.
changed.
But T, it's also it's at the time you took the assessment. Where was your headspace? Where were you then? Because you could still be completely somewhere different.
That's right.
Outside of some psychometric tools like this, you may take it 100 times and still come out the same thing. But majority of these things are a mind frame of where you were when you took it.
Yeah,
So you could be in a
snapshot.
complete, right? It's a snapshot
Snapshot
of your
of the
past.
point
It's
in time.
actually a snapshot of your past,
That's right.
not your
Well,
present or
Well,
future.
let me remind you guys how I started doing this. Remember, I was living in Ann Arbor. I was in my early 20s and, getting out on my own, needed some subject matter. And I had this idea about the change grid in my head. And I'd seen a couple of little models. And so I had friends who were actively using a lot of different psychometric tools. And so I said, I would like to be able to interview your audience members at the conclusion of that psychometric experience. And I just want to ask them 2 questions. And so they let me do it. And my 2 questions were, what did you turn out to be? And they would rattle off whatever it is. And I was noticing how quickly they would label themselves. And the second thing that I asked them was, and how accurate do you think that label is? And what I heard more, I mean, like 90+% of the time was, well, I can see I'm a little bit of all these things, or I can see how I turned out to be a whatever, but I think I'm all these things. It really just depends on the situation. And what I kept hearing was, it depends on the situation, depends on the situation. And that's why I said, the world doesn't need another personality type. It doesn't need another tool to look at you as a person. It needs a tool to look at the situations. And so that's what the change grid is. It's activity specific. It's situation specific. So
That's brilliant.
yeah, well, thank you. But that's how it's all came to be. Okay, we'll pick up where we left off next time. So thanks everybody. Take care.
Thanks everybody. Have a
Take
great
care.
day.
Bye.
I know.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.